Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Business in Bytes podcast, the show where strategy, security, and common sense collide, something far lacking in today's civilization. I'm your host, John Hansman. I know the guys are laughing. Here with me, I've got my co-hosts, Emilio and Ryan, and we're super excited to be here today. We're going to talk today about the unsung heroes. We're not talking about your mother-in-law. We're not talking about your firewall. We're not talking about your antivirus. We're talking about your employees. So today we're going to talk about training and phishing simulations. What's the most effective way to train your employees to make sure that your first line of defense, which is the common place that people enter into businesses' infrastructure, is protected? And we're going to talk about some real stories, both the good and maybe the terrifying, even though it's not Halloween. I'm full of jokes today. My name, again, was John Hansman. And Emilio out in Florida, sunny Florida. How's it going?
It's sunny. It's hot.
Hey, it's sunny here too in Washington.
Sunny, it's hot. It's summer. I
We're
do the
doing great.
landscaping guys, trimming down some trees, but overall good. Looking forward to
Nice. And
on
Ryan,
July 4th weekend here.
how's your weather?
It's sunny here too. It's no longer 100 plus here in New Mexico, so that's
Nice.
awesome.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's just dive right in. Let's start with the fact that 91% of successful cyber attacks begin with a phishing email. I got to get my mouth working today. Emilio, why are we still seeing this?
Why I start with phishing? Well, funny enough, I was having this conversation with the CFO yesterday, and he said, why do we have to do all of this? If we have antivirus and we have all this high-end stuff, why do we need so many things? And I said, because it's a layered approach, right? I said, email, a lot of stuff comes in through phishing. Email doesn't live on the computer, right? Email lives in the cloud environment, in the SaaS environment. So for someone to gain access to that, they don't need access to your computer necessarily, right? You have your email on your phone. You can check your email from any public computer usually. So having access to that means a lot. The other thing is, email is a numbers game for the hackers, right? If I can send out 10,000 tries a day, all I got to do is hit once, right? And all of that is through email. I don't have to get into your computer. I don't have to get into your network. I don't got to know anything about your life. I just send you an email. If I'm lucky enough that you click on the link and put in your credentials, boom, I have access to whatever you have access to, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
So, the breaches, most breaches that we see out there nowadays just start with an attack on a person, and not a physical attack, but they go in, they call somebody, they masquerade as somebody, as Microsoft, as Apple, and they get the information because people are vulnerable. They want to help somebody. And
Right.
In this case, stranger danger, as we all learned to not talk to strangers when we were growing up. People then go back and they start talking to strangers again. So
Right.
it's a thing.
Well, and I think the biggest problem that we see is there's a lot of emails. I had a client, one of my clients that I had given a proposal to 6 to 8 months ago, called me this morning with a business email compromise. And I can tell you probably how he fell for it, because I saw what emails were sent out to his customers, to his email addresses when I looked. And it was the classic SharePoint lookalike. So that's one of the things that we're facing, is a lot of those emails look identical to the stuff that's real. And so part of why we need good training is so that we can help people identify what is the real thing, what's the counterfeit. And there's this old saying that I've heard that people who study counterfeit money study the real thing, so that when they touch the bad money, they can tell instantly that it's not right. And so part of what cybersecurity training does, it really helps your people get in front of what's real, what's not, and help them figure out how they can identify harmful things. And that's really cybersecurity training, but it goes deeper because there's so much more going on in the world today.
Never heard that before, but I like it. But something else, right? We started with the title. We're saying our unsung heroes, our cyber heroes, but that can go both ways if you don't train your employees properly, right? So what happens is they can be your heroes, but they can also be the weakest link in your company.
Yeah.
Right. I tell everybody all the time, I say I could put 100 tools in place. I can put 100 policies in place. But if somebody just opens the front door and lets somebody in, there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop that, right?
Yeah.
If we just give away our access, there's no way we can stop that. Now we're human, right? We go through stress, we go through distraction, we try to multitask. We're doing so many things so fast throughout the day that, as John mentioned, an email that comes through that looks familiar because you've got some of these emails before, right? You got an email that says, this file has been shared with you from John Hansman. This file has been shared with you from Ryan Miller. Oh yeah, they always share files with me. Let me go ahead and click on this SharePoint link. Oh, for some reason it needs me to re-authenticate. Then you re-authenticate, and what you're really doing is providing your credentials. And then boom, we're here again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. We just had a client 2 weeks ago call us crying, and she had realized that she let somebody crack into her Microsoft 365. Now, fortunately, we caught it real quick and were able to stop it. But she was logging in, she got a call and said, "Hey, you got a code on your phone." So somehow the client cracked this, and we ended up finding out that she had lost a notebook that she had written down all of her passwords in. Really bad idea, but she'd lost a notebook, and then somebody found her this, and it somehow made its way out there. And somebody called her and said, "Hey, can you give me that code that just came to your cell phone?" And I was like, oh my. So we were able to shut her account down within seconds, and she had called us just after she hung up with that other person. They didn't even make an attempt, but there was a lot of bad attempts at the password coming up. So
That's
that
crazy.
just happened very quickly, and but that happens all the time. It's not something that is uncommon. I've heard of it many times. I've had personal friends that have called me and said, "Hey, Microsoft called me," and I give them the code, and I said, "What?" And we don't support them, but that's what it is.
So before we go on to the next topic, guys, why don't we each give one example of how someone being phished can hurt your company, right? Like it can be a real world example, it can be something. Go ahead, John, if you want to start, and then I can go second or third.
Yeah, I think it depends. So one of the things that's really fascinating, it really depends on what type of industry you're in. So if you're in medical, it might be they use phishing to try to get access to your network or to your computers. Click on this link, and it ends up being malicious and gets you into that computer, which then gives you access to the network. I think the most common thing that I see are payroll or payable scams. That's the most common one I see. Here's an invoice, click on it, and it tries to take you to a fake SharePoint type address where you end up having to put in your Microsoft credentials, and now your email is compromised. And these guys are generally pretty smart. They try to send those emails out quickly while they're now looking through your database and figuring out what they can steal and download all at the same time.
I got one that's a little bit more indirect. So they hacked this person's email. She gave the credentials away, and she receives donations. And what they did is they made the donor donate to the wrong place. So now he's questioning the validity of that company, as other companies, So imagine, I call it kind of like the trickle down effect of it, right? It might not affect you directly, but it's going to affect so many things around you.
Yeah.
It can affect your Google reviews. So now let's say they start reaching out to current clients or former clients and bothering them. And the way that information leak is through you. So now how do you get new customers, right? What happens to existing customers? What happens to people that want to go back and write reviews about how their information was stolen on your watch type thing?
Yeah, we had another one recently, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. An engineering client that we been doing work for a long time. They got an email in that said, well, there's a bid we want you to bid on for a project that we want you to do. And they recognize the email. They even went as far as to recognize the domain. They actually opened it up and clicked on and looked at the domain, but they didn't look that the domain was misspelled. Very common thing. They added an extra letter in there, and then boom, they then clicked on it. They started typing in their password, and before they finished typing it, they called us because they said something doesn't seem right here. Thank goodness they called us. They were literally one click away from giving full access to their whole Microsoft 365 account. And this happened to be the owner of the engineering firm. And thank goodness they did that. We changed the password immediately. We reset all their MFA, and they did not do it, and they did not get in. Fortunately, we're seeing more of the good things where people are stopping doing that. And we always have the bad ones that we got to go and clean up and do all the postmortem. But that's what we're seeing now. But
yeah, we see more. We're seeing more postmortem with people who say no. Like the last ones that I've had were successful attacks they weren't clients of ours. They were people who, like the one I had this morning that called me 6 or 8 months ago, solved a problem for him, gave him a proposal, even did a risk assessment and walked through what he needs to do. He said he didn't want to spend the money, and now he's got to go through a company to remediate and figure out exactly what was taken, and because we don't know yet, we're still figuring that out. And that money is at least 6 months to 12 months alone of what his payment to us would have been, not to mention what if we find it's really bad, that number can jump up exponentially and go really fast.
John, I've seen it go to 10 or 20 times what our annual costs are. And that's scary. That training and other cybersecurity mechanisms are just a good insurance. And we all pay for insurance on our cars. Maybe we don't want to pay for it, but we pay for that, and that protects us while we're driving around all the time.
And I think what most people don't understand, and I was talking to somebody this week about the CFO about really how to look at IT services. If you really do the breakdown, you're really just adding a loaded cost to each employee. Like that's if you want to look at it the same way you do for medical insurance, you're adding a loaded cost for support and cybersecurity for that individual employee. And if you break it down that way, it makes a lot more sense. Oh, okay, so when I hire a person, I have their salary, I have their medical insurance, I have their benefits, and I have their cybersecurity and support. Makes it really easy to think through that. And then when you think about what it costs in the long term, it's so much better to have that in place rather than end up having a compromise that just can destroy your company. The only saving grace for him at this point is he's really small. And so he does a lot on a different program. So we'll see what he has, but he's an electrical contractor. He's got a lot of information about projects he's worked on. So we'll see. And he also had a lot of phishing stuff go out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
With that said, so how do we stop this, right? So now let's segment into training. So what do we put in place to stop things like this?
So a big thing that we put in place, and I'm sure y'all put in place too, is we put a training and awareness program in place that drops training to clients on a monthly basis, sometimes on every other week basis, depending on the regulatory compliance required. But it drops training, and then they can go in and do training. These trainings don't take long; they take a couple minutes. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and they just go through training once a month, or you can do it all at once and then do it again in 6 months or a year. But that training just gives people what to look out for. It's the how to spot the bad guy kind of training.
Mhm.
And there's other kind of training that we can do, but this is the first line of defense. It's better than firewalls for the first line. It's better than antivirus or EDR, but it just takes care of a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to security scams or email scams and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So
I agree. So yeah, short monthly focus training. It doesn't have to be too long, 4 to 7 minutes. You don't want information overload for your employees. You just want to hit on some key points with one takeaway. So, all right, last week I learned that I shouldn't plug a random USB that I encounter into something. I find a USB, I shouldn't plug it into just any computer, see what it has. That's what I learned last week. This week I learned that I should hover my mouse over the hyperlink to see if it's really going to take me where it says it's going to take me. So if you take away one thing a week, you start kind of building that repository and exercising it, right? Practicing it. When an email comes in, are you going through the motions of what you learned every week so that it becomes second nature to you and not a thing? To me now, looking at the domain name in detail is second nature to me, right? Like I got to know that this is from the legit person that it says it's from. So, it's just building that cybersecurity culture. It's not just, we got to think about it here. I think we need to think about it everywhere, right? In our personal lives, with our personal finances, our personal information, since a lot of what we do in this day and age is digital now.
Yeah. And I think what the reality is that people have to realize that we're talking about a culture change, not a checkbox. So a lot of people tend to think about maybe cybersecurity training the way they think about doing CPR every 3 years for their staff. We just got to check the box to make sure that everyone can save a life, or at least we've, for insurance reasons, can say that we made sure everyone can save a life. But really,
give everybody CPR training, right?
Right. But when we really talk about it, we're talking about culture. We're talking about using cybersecurity training to help your employees really make sure that they're thinking about cybersecurity. They're thinking about all these little things that they don't take much time it doesn't take much time to run your mouse over and just do a quick check. Most of the things are really simple to do, but they can cost a lot of money when someone falls for one of those things and put a business out completely.
So, John, do these training programs actually work? Do they stick? Oops,
I think they stick. I think it really matters. It's a matter of, I think I'm breaking up a little. I think it's really a matter of what you're doing and the frequency. So if you're just doing a once a year thing, I don't think it's going to stick. Like we as humans do not retain information. If you go to church and you watch a sermon on Sunday morning, 75 to 85% of what you heard doesn't stick with you. That's why you take notes. If you go see a public speaking event, if you go to a comedy show, you might remember 2 jokes that were really funny, but the rest of what was talked about, you just have glimpses of memory. So we have to remember that when we're building out cybersecurity. There's a psychology thing to it of saying repetition really does make a difference. So I would say a proper cybersecurity planned education that's done well, yes, I think it moves the needle. And I think it's probably one of the most single important things you can do in your cybersecurity stack that actually would help, second to multi-factor. Like, I'm still obviously a fan of virus protection, all those things, but I think those 2 things, make a huge difference. They make a huge difference.
It's the seatbelt and the airbags.
Exactly.
If I have a client that's that I present the CSRA to, and they're like, "Look, we're not ready. We can't do it," or something like that. I say, "Hey, how about we just do security awareness? Just so that you guys know what's out there. Of course, we're doing 1 out of 15 things on a checklist, but like John said, it's the one that might save us at the end of the day, right? all right, you might not know how to swim or do this, but let's teach you CPR. Maybe you can, maybe one day you'll save a life. Maybe you won't do it right, but at least you'll know of it. You'll know, what you should do and things like that. So, we can only do so much. But as John mentioned, doing that definitely puts you one step ahead of everybody else.
When we do training, sometimes we'll do in-person training when clients are getting a little trouble getting everybody to do their online training. So sometimes we'll try to catch people up with in-person training. So whatever is presented electronically, we present. Some people are like, well, does this really happen? So we actually bring in some real scenarios and we put them up on the screen, or we hand them out to people. And I bring a real scenario and then a scenario of like a phishing attempt, and I say, tell me the difference between these two, and I put them down in front of just a random person that I'm training, and they look at it, and I'll say, I'm going to come back to you in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and I go around and I go back to them and they say there is no difference, and then I'll show them the little nuance of that one letter that's in the domain name, or that weird link that's in there that you don't see when you print it out, but when you click on it, it goes to a different spot. So those things that look so similar are really not, what's the saying? Things that look so the same are not really the same, or whatever. Looking at those magic eye books that we all had as kids. So, it's just crazy. They get the craziness, but if we can help clients spot one mix up or one little problem, one of their employees spot that might save their day and save them millions of dollars and lots of customer reputation loss.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. It'll save the attempt that day. Then he's got to do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and then twice the day after that.
Yeah, I mean, we're inspecting at least 2 to 5 emails a day that clients will forward to us and say, is this real? At least. And some days it's more than that. And that's every day of the week. And they even come in on the weekend because people are in working on the weekend, and then we'll inspect them for them and go from there. And it's just, and they're looking so real. AI has made them look so real and has made it so tricky. And, that's why, as we talked about on other podcasts, we're fighting AI with AI, because sometimes that's the quicker, faster way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing that, I'm wondering as we're just talking about this, I think we should talk about the value of us training through simulation. So, because there's 2 ways to train. You can train by video and you can train by gamification. But I think there's real big value in phishing simulations and actually putting a test in front of employees, not to trick them, not to get them in trouble.
It is to trick them.
Put this person fell for a phishing email frame at the front door, with the cone, over their head, no, but let's talk about the value of doing phishing training. I think that's a huge topic that we should be covering.
Phishing training is invaluable. It's live training that when you click on something that you think is good, like that American Express gift card that you won, or that Walmart gift card that you won, and then it comes up and says, whoops, you did this wrong. And then it comes up and makes you go through a video of what you did wrong on that. And not what you did wrong, but more importantly, what you can do better next time and why you shouldn't have clicked on that. And then it reports it back so the organization knows that. I was just talking to a client last week, another client, and they are actually putting in a policy in place. If they click on 3 phishing emails, they will be written up. Now, this is a little tough, but they work in the defense space. So they're a defense contractor. So they click on 3 phishing emails that are the test phishing emails. And this is the most teeth I've ever seen put in that. But they take it seriously because they're doing military contracting. And they don't want any possible chance that somebody's going to click on something and let them into their system.
You know what? That like you said, I haven't seen anyone apply teeth to it, as you mentioned. I see arguments for both sides, but definitely I think if you're in a field that you have to meet certain guidelines and compliance, definitely if you're doing military contracts or defense contracts, the last thing you want is somebody breaking into your system and accessing whatever it is that you have. So I'm not for it. I tell management when we're implementing this, I say cybersecurity as a whole, but specifically the security awareness, I say management has to be 100% behind this. Like, this can't be we're going to let this person off the hook, and this person only has to do a couple, and this person has to do more.
100%.
Like, we need to push down, and everyone has to have the same amount of responsibility and respect towards this program. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly.
Yeah. I have an example of that where I had a customer who had multiple breaches, all email, cybersecurity, all business email compromises. And they literally had some leadership changes and whatnot. First people like, yeah, that sounds great. We'll do it. Didn't really help the management push it to get it. Next person didn't care at all. The next CEO came in. He had multiple, like within the time he started, and within like 60 days, he had 2 business email compromises from people. And I told him in a meeting, I was like, we've been talking about this for like 2 years and trying to get leadership to push this along. And he finally put his foot down and said, look, this is mandatory. You have to get it done. That, like, he even went as far. I mean, he went a little bit gung ho, but he was like, this is conditional to your employment. Like, this is part of working here, is doing this. And so he was able to go from having two people do their training up to 98% compliance.
So what do you guys do? So we do about
or less.
We do about
90. I think it was even 3 months that he was able to get everyone through the training. Yeah, he was able to get everybody trained within that time. Yeah, it's pretty.
You guys do how much do you guys do? We do 1 or 2 a month, and we try to do different ones. So let's say it's a 50-person client. We try to do 4 different campaigns, maybe one that's associated with logistics, with production, operations, finance, and that. But we also trickle them out. I don't want somebody looking behind them and say, "Hey, did you just get an email from UPS with this, and that?"
Yeah.
The person next to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, I just got it too. It must be spam." I don't like that. So I try to. Our system has, we can trickle them out. So
ours we can trickle them out, but we can also build a campaign for specific individuals. So we can build one for the accounting department.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll not just trickle, but we'll trickle and give up to 4 campaigns that the system can pick from.
Got it. Yeah, like randomized.
So now you can go, okay, this person's it's not just an email, but they get a random email in that group of people. So we do a little bit of both. We really try to make it relevant to the department that we're sending to. I think that's really valuable. So there's a little thought that needs to go into phishing tests, just to make sure you're not sending. There's some things that accounting emails. There's certain people that the accounting emails don't matter to. Like a bank thing isn't going to matter to a salesperson.
Like we actually do some social engineering testing, which my staff finds a blast, because they actually they anonymize their phone number and they call into a client that they know that they don't normally work with, because each of our clients have one contact point that they generally work with, and we have somebody else call in and see how far they can get without saying they're from our company, without even saying a company.
Yeah.
And some of the insurance companies are starting to require this, and we have to report back on how that works. We can get pretty far in some clients that don't have the security training and awareness.
When you say far, Ryan, like what are you digging for?
We can get to the point of letting them connect to their computer.
Oh.
Yes. And social engineering it's another thing, but that's part of what's in in the training. If you have training with one of us, you're going to see that social engineering is another way that people can get in. It's not just through email, but just getting on a call, and then we'll just basically hang up the phone on them. We've had to do this for a couple clients, more when you get into the federal government contracting space. We've had to do these social engineering simulations, I guess, because it's actually one of my employees calling and doing it. And at first they were like not thrilled about doing this at all, but now they love it. They love the challenge of seeing how far they can get. And sometimes they get hung up on, which is the best bet, but sometimes they get to the point where you can actually click on that and get into that. And oftentimes a new client will do a test. We'll do the phishing simulation, but we'll do a test and see how far we can get.
Reminds me of Scammer Payback. Have you ever seen him on Facebook?
Yeah.
Or not on Facebook, on YouTube, where he's always trying to get the scammers, get into the scammers' computer.
Yeah.
And he's pretty smart and he's pretty good and he's pretty successful at it, which is pretty amazing. So we're coming close to our 30-minute mark. Let's talk about some bite-sized brilliance tips. I like this. This is a lot of fun. A quick cyber move. What is something that people can implement today? And we'll jump on with you first, Emilio.
I can go ahead. So one thing real quick is you can send your team a 1-question quiz, and it would just could be something like, what would you do if you get an email from HR asking you to reset a payroll password? And then let them talk it out and, just see where it goes, right? Which direction it goes in.
Yeah.
I like what Ryan said he was doing. I'd heard of it, but I've never considered implementing it. Something else I did for a CSRA recently, Ryan, real quick while we're on the subject, is I just showed up to the office and I try to see how far can I get to the server room. First I got there, I walk around the building, I checked all the doors were pretty locked. I saw they had cameras. I walked in through the receptionist. She said, "Oh, may I help you?" I said, "Oh, I'm just waiting." I know the IT guy's name, right? So, I'm just waiting for this gentleman. He told me to just wait for him in the lobby. So boom, bypass receptionist. So I'm in the lobby. I look around. I see 3 rooms open and 2 hallways. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it about 30 seconds and just pretend I'm on my phone. And then in 30 seconds, I'm going to try to walk through one of the hallways and just head towards the back. And right before that, one of the IT guys came out of the bathroom and saw me sitting in the lobby. And he's like, "Hey, what's up?" He's like, "Are you waiting for a meeting with, so-and-so, the IT director?" And I was like, "Yeah, something like that." But then I could see that the energy in the room changed, and he might have picked up what was happening. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. I let them know when I gave them the CSRA review. But when Ryan brought that up, I thought that was funny. But yeah, 1 question to your team: ask them what they would do if HR emailed them asking them to reset their payroll password. That's my bite-sized brilliance for today.
So mine is, we mentioned AI earlier. Query your favorite AI model or your favorite AI tool. Just ask it to write an email pretending to be the CEO, asking for a wire transfer or asking for an advance. And just look at how real that email is going to look. And that's just an elementary version of what these cyber criminals are doing. So it gives you, opens up your eyes. Oftentimes when I do have to do training in person, when I do an in-person training, I'll write an email that looks so real and it's just loaded with all kinds of phrases and stuff. And And again, I sit that down in front of someone and I say, "Do you realize that?" And I really do these things so people kind of wake up to say, "Oh, well, that looks so real. What's going on here?" To know that there's a lot of hidden, bad things in those kind of communications.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things, we deploy some tools that actually stick a flag in your email. Does 2 things that I love. One of them is, if it's an external email, you've seen that before, it says external. And I think that's valuable. And here's the reason why. And you can do that with just Microsoft does it natively if you set it up. But it's valuable because if somebody internal sends you an email and you see the external tag on it, that should be a red flag. That's telling you that the CEO is not really sending you an email. So it should be a mind thing to help people. The other thing I love, we use a product called Iron Scales. It does a thing where if it knows that you've never received an email from somebody before, the very first email, a little red banner pops up that says, "Just so you know, you've never received an email from this person before." So it kind of also helps you with your mind. Just think through, okay, this is a first person so like the great example of that, say it's an external person who emails you regularly, but then all of a sudden you see a red banner for them. That would be a good red flag for you to go, oh, wait, maybe their email's mismatched. Why would that be? And then the ability to crowdsource within your organization, or with our product, it's wider than that, where you can actually flag an email for spam. And in our case, it can pull it out of everyone's mailbox once it's confirmed. So it can literally, if you have a confirmed email that's going around in your organization and you flag it, it can rip it out of everybody else's email and pull it back and block it. So there's some really neat tools out there. I think that that's super invaluable to make sure that you have. But just having ways to just stop the brain for a second and break it out of its normal cycle of just doing things, I think is a really great way to help, protect your business and give you an extra layer of using employees to protect, stay alert. And you can tell them about those 3 things in your training that's specific to your business. And that alone, those can help just protect your business as well. So that'd be mine.
And if you own a business out there, sending out cybersecurity tips, sending out a couple tips once a month is just something. Maybe half your staff will delete it, but hopefully your staff will read the 3 tips you have on your email that you send out. Right. This is something that some of our clients do. We provide them the tips and they send that out. And I've had people stop me in the hallways at those clients and be like, hey, those cybersecurity tips so-and-so is sending out are just like, sound so simple, but it makes me think about these kind of things. Yeah. So that's like a win, that they're actually thinking about it. It's top of head here.
That's exactly. And that's why we include them in our programs. That's why all 3 of us have that as part of our normal culture that we help create with our clients to make sure that we're trying to keep that stuff top of mind.
And phishing testing is like a fire drill. We have fire drills in buildings. Why not have those kind of things?
And here's the question. This is one of those things that'll date you. Okay. If you've ever seen Kindergarten Cop, do you want to be like the first time he walks out during a fire drill? Or do you want to be like the second time he walks out? So watch Kindergarten Cop if you've never seen it, because I can tell these 2 guys have, because they know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because the very first time Arnold walks out with a bunch of kids, they're like screaming their head off, running out like crazy. The next time they walk out in an organized fashion and everyone's surprised. That's a really good, hilarious, I know I just made it up just now, way to think about. Do you want to be prepared? Do you want to have organized things happen when you have an incident? Or do you want to have a plan? And most of what we're suggesting in this podcast as we talk is really about helping businesses come up with a plan so you can either prevent a cybersecurity attack, limit the blast radius of that cybersecurity attack, or at least know that you've got some safeguards and some plans in place in case, on the very off chance that somebody gets through all of your defenses, you have a plan. So I think that's what we're all about.
In case the S hits the F.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, as we wrap things up, is there anything else that you guys want to throw out there before we close it out?
No, I think today we kept it as we said, like we want our training to be, right, just kind of concise, a couple key takeaways. We don't want to overwhelm the audience too much today. I know it's a long holiday weekend coming up, so happy early 4th of July to everybody, and we hope you guys enjoy your weekend and festivities. Yeah. Don't party too hard. If you are, call us, see if one of us are close.
Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely. We've got our information in the show notes for how you can follow us on all of the different platforms as well. You can see us generally here Wednesdays around this time every week, and we look forward to seeing you. So you definitely follow wherever you're watching this. Alternatively, you can just go to the Business in Bytes podcast and follow us there, which would be really super helpful for the growth of this channel, as well as we have that on Facebook and LinkedIn and on YouTube. And then also we've got that on the podcasting apps as well, like Apple and Spotify. So definitely follow us and help us just grow this channel so that we can help just prepare small businesses be successful and not fall for cybersecurity incidents. And then, we'll continue to be talking about AI as we move ahead, but we wanted to just focus in on one topic today for the holiday. So, well, thanks for being here, gentlemen. I'm super excited to continue to kick this ball down the road of growing this podcast and helping people to keep their businesses secure and safe, learn how to use AI securely and safely, and hopefully have fun in the process. And that's what we're all about here at the Business in Bytes podcast. So until next week, we will see you guys later.
Happy 4th.
Happy 4th.